Alright, I might have figured out why Oswald likes Coke in this version, but it's either going to break me or Five Nights at Freddy's as a whole. Welcome back to another Five Nights at Freddy's theory, and today I know we should probably be talking about all the new Secret of the Mimic teasers that have been dropping, but I've still been stuck on the interactive novels recently. Like, genuinely, there is just one singular detail from Return to the Pit that I keep coming back to anytime I think about this book, and it's actually, can we cut the music to this bit of the video? Thank you so much. I know I joked about it in my last video talking about Return to the Pit, that Oswald likes Coke in this version, so it means that he's either more or less canon to the games than he normally is. But I genuinely have been thinking about that idea for a long time. Why does he like Coke in this version of Into the Pit when all the others specify that he likes orange soda? It doesn't make sense to me. And then I thought maybe this was just an accident on the author's part. I mean, turning Into the Pit into an interactive novel had to have a lot of complications, so maybe it was just something that accidentally got changed between the two stories, and there's no lore implication between orange soda or Coke. But then I reread Into the Pit, and after rereading it, I then pulled back out Return to the Pit to see if there were many differences between the path that seems as similar to Into the Pit as it does in Return to the Pit. And there's not that many differences between the two. I even started writing down some of the similarities between Return to the Pit and Into the Pit that I was finding between the two. And of course, I probably didn't get them all, considering that I was only going down the one path in Return to the Pit, and I was only skimming between the two to see the similarities and differences between them. But I was finding a lot of small details that were still making their way from Into the Pit back into Return to the Pit, like Mike's shirt being a Back to the Future shirt, which is not necessary to the story, but it still made its way in. Like, one of the few other details that are changed between Into the Pit and Return to the Pit is that it's not called Skee Ball in Return to the Pit, it's called Pizza Roller, which actually matches up with Into the Pit, the game. So then I started looking at Into the Pit, the game, to see if that had anything that would help us with this Return to the Pit problem. Maybe in the game version, he likes Sprite, and the kind of soda that he's drinking just doesn't matter to the story at all. But after talking to Jeff at the very beginning, he asks if you want a refill of orange soda. And mind you, the game version of Into the Pit changes a lot of details in order to make the game more interesting to the player, like how the yellow rabbit attacks on day 1 of visiting 1985 rather than day 3. But for some reason, the detail of Oswald liking orange soda sticks around, so Return to the Pit is the only one to get it wrong. On second thought, maybe I'm the one that's wrong. Maybe Return to the Pit has a good reason for Oswald liking Coke in this version, and we just need to look at some of the other details in order to figure out why. So let's just open this up. So Oswald gets sucked into an arcade cabinet. Okay. There's also a part where we try and cheat the book, but we get a purple guy poem. And Chica is Oswald's neighbor in one of these endings. Now, surprisingly, even with all these strange pieces, I think there might be an explanation that can tie them all together. But I know you're not going to like it, because I don't like it. That explanation being that Return to the Pit is just an in-universe video game. I mean, the books practically give us that solution with the whole getting sucked into the arcade cabinet bit and VIP. In VIP, we put on the Freddy Fazbear mask in order to multiply our points, but people can do this all the time in order to visit the Pizzaplex whenever it's actually closed. And in Return to the Pit, we see that Oswald just gets sucked into the arcade cabinet, and anytime he dies from that point forward, he just reverts back to the previous save of the arcade cabinet. He doesn't start back at the beginning of the book like every other death in the book. And in VIP, even if you're already wearing the mask, you're able to put the mask on again, going one layer down into the game again, which sounds kind of like if you're playing Return to the Pit and you find an arcade cabinet in that game and you decide to play that. You're going one layer down inside the game that you're already playing, a game within a game. And while Oswald is in the arcade cabinet, we can find a path that shouldn't be available to us because, well, the item that's required for that path doesn't exist. Of course, we can go down the path anyway, but that leads to the cheater ending, where we find the poem about the purple guy that I mentioned earlier, saying that we cheated at the game and then it causes the game to crash. But what's interesting about the crash is it doesn't put us back at the beginning of the arcade cabinet section, it puts us back at the beginning of the book, implying that the game crashing does just a little bit more than we thought it did. Maybe because the entire book is a video game, and this one cheater ending resets the entire book, not just that arcade that Oswald is stuck in. And the whole going back to a previous save bit is literally what these books were designed to do. If you get a game over, it tells you to turn back to page 2, or sometimes you can turn back to a previous save that you might have found in these books. It's similar to what happens whenever Oswald enters the arcade cabinet, and similar to that, Oswald doesn't seem to have any limitation to how many lives he has. He does mention that he doesn't want to take that similar path because, well, he feels the pain whenever he dies, but there's no limitation. You could still go down that exact same path, similar to what happens in these books. That part of the game where Oswald goes to his neighbor in order to try and get help, but then it turns out that his neighbor is actually Chica, that's just Fazbear Entertainment including an NPC whenever you get too far from the main objective. Something that's going to tell you, hey, you're not exactly going the right way. And it's obvious because, well, Chica shouldn't be your neighbor. And that whole Coke versus orange soda bit that got me started on all this madness can be boiled down to one of two options. Either the developers of this game didn't really keep track of every single detail, so they just gave Oswald Coke instead of orange soda, or it's an ad placement. They added Coke in order to get money from Coca-Cola. Now, real quick, that might have sounded like that I don't think that Into the Pit is canon anymore. I still think that Into the Pit happens on the timeline. I just think that this version specifically doesn't happen. This is just a video game based off of the real life events that happened to Oswald. Where have we heard Fazbear Entertainment trying to make a profit off of other people's suffering? Now, for any of you who made it this far in the video, you're probably saying to yourself, Terminal, why exactly would I hate this theory? This just sounds like Tales and Frights fiction with a few extra steps. And to be honest, it kind of is, but it's got one extra detail that I hate, and I know you'll hate too. Remember earlier how I talked about how Return to the Pit has that weird poem about the purple guy if you try and cheat? Yeah, that's not a detail that all of the interactive novels have, but a few of them do. Specifically, two: Return to the Pit and The Week Before. You see, I told you you weren't gonna like this theory because I don't like this theory. I've been saying for months now that The Week Before is canon to the game's timeline. Many theorists have. I mean, even on the back, it says that this takes place the week before the first Five Nights at Freddy's game. And yet, now, after looking with slightly different lenses, I'm trying to say that this is just a video game in the game's timeline. I might need mental help. Like, The Week Before does so many things in order to try and describe the layout as closely as possible to the FNaF 1 building. It does such a good job, but yet, it still has details in it that the original FNaF 1 building did not have. For example, they added party rooms, which on the FNaF 1 maps are nowhere to be seen, and we're told in FNaF 3 that the only rooms that are not on cameras, that are not anywhere on the map, are the safe rooms. So why are the two party rooms that are mentioned in The Week Before not in FNaF 1? And come to think of it, all those details that The Week Before shares with FNaF 1 are unreliable, thanks to Help Wanted 1, where we learned that an indie game developer made those first few games. And while yes, Fazbear Entertainment did try discrediting the rogue indie game developer, he's still an indie game developer that most likely did not have his hands on blueprints to these restaurants, or even voice recordings from the original phone guy. But that just begs the question, who exactly are we listening to in the first three FNaF games? Who did we read about in The Week Before? Who is Ralph? Well, I hate to say it, but Ralph might not be real. Fazbear Entertainment most likely created him in a necessity to sell a video game. Let me explain. The rogue indie game developer was most likely the person to voice those training tapes. And while there was probably real training tapes, the rogue indie game developer probably did not get his hands on them. So he just voiced the part of the phone guy. So when those games blew up and Fazbear Entertainment did their thing in order to discredit the indie game developer, they then saw an opportunity to create a spin-off game where they created the character Ralph. Now, you're probably asking yourselves, why would Fazbear Entertainment create a game based off of the phone guy of the series? And there's a few different reasons. Number one, they're cheap. So they already have all the assets of the original FNaF 1 building from Help Wanted. All they need to do is move some pieces around, add some new pieces, and bam, they have the set for their next video game. Number two, people in the real world love Phone Guy, so why wouldn't people in the FNaF universe love Phone Guy? I mean, he's quirky at night, he's funny in stressful situations, he has lore relevance. What's not to love about Phone Guy? So you just take our love for Phone Guy and move it over to the FNaF universe, and there's your reason to create a game based off of him. And finally, reason number three, and this is more so, why would they create a game where you play as Phone Guy, where you die tons of gruesome deaths? They literally have Springtrap as one of their mascots, a giant green rabbit costume that contains a rotting human inside, literally has merch. He's in video games, he has cardboard cutouts, he's in FNaF AR in different costumes. They don't really care about gruesome stuff at this point in the series. So does that mean that I think that all the interactive novels are just video games on the timeline? No, not exactly. Like I said earlier, I think that the only ones that are video games are Return to the Pit and The Week Before, because they're the only ones that have that weird purple guy poem that crashes the game after you read it, which I thought was really weird at first until I realized that the other two are the only ones to take place in the Pizzaplex. So there does seem to be some sort of weird pattern here. I just don't understand exactly why some of them got video game treatment and some feel more real. And this is the part of the video where I ask, what do you guys think? And this time I really need your help. I was not kidding when I said I don't like this theory. Sure, there are bits and pieces that I do like the fact that Oswald goes from orange soda to Coke because it's a video game, but overall, it does mean that The Week Before is practically useless now, that the information that we get from this book means nothing, and Ralph may not be a real person. So please, I need you to find something for me that is going to disprove this. And you know what? This time, I'm not even going to ask you to like and subscribe, okay? I just sat you through 12 minutes of the FNaF garbage that goes through my head, and I know that stuff's not pretty. And also, here are two videos that are going to cleanse your YouTube palette. I'm sure these two are going to be less insane. I hope. Thanks for sticking around to the end on this one, and as long as I don't get roasted over a fire for this, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!